Did you know that in Ohio, it is explicitly a crime to get a fish drunk? Or that in Alaska, you are legally forbidden from pushing a live moose out of a moving airplane? The American wilderness is ruled by the most insane and hilarious laws you have ever heard, including a ban on fishing while sitting on a giraffe's neck and the specific prohibition of catching tuna with a cowboy lasso. We have dug up 49 of the absolute dumbest restrictions that actually exist in the history books, so hit that subscribe button right now because things are about to get weird. 1. You might think the skies over Alaska are filled with majestic eagles, but apparently they were once filled with confused moose hurtling toward the ground. And the law specifically forbids you from spotting a moose from your airplane window and then shoving the live beast out of the moving aircraft. Imagine a pilot named Cletus who decided the cargo hold was too crowded for a 1,000-pound animal that clearly needed to learn how to fly. This oddly specific rule exists because at some point, a very misguided individual actually tried to conduct an aerial moose drop, and legislators had to intervene. It really makes you wonder how exactly you wrestle a moose near the exit door at 10,000 feet without crashing the plane. 2. Fishing in Pennsylvania used to be a lot more explosive before the state government realized that TNT is not technically a fishing rod. The law strictly prohibits catching fish by throwing literal dynamite into the water, which seems like a rule that should be obvious to anyone with a brain. Picture a frustrated angler named Bob who got tired of waiting for a nibble and decided to just blow up the entire lake to get his dinner. The problem is that when you detonate a stick of dynamite, you do not just get the base you wanted, but you also get water launched into orbit and every fish floating belly up. It turns a relaxing afternoon by the river into an unofficial act of domestic terrorism. 3. It might sound like a frat party gone wrong, but in Ohio, you are legally forbidden from getting a fish drunk. Apparently, the state legislature was genuinely concerned that someone would pour a beer into a fish bowl and let the goldfish swim under the influence. Imagine a lonely guy named Dave trying to bond with his pet bass by sharing a bottle of whiskey on a Friday night. The authorities decided that aquatic intoxication was a serious threat to society and felt the need to write it down. This law implies that at some point in history, a drunk fish actually caused enough trouble to warrant government intervention. So please keep your alcohol to yourself and let the fish stay sober. 4. You might expect to find coyotes in the desert of Arizona, but the law strictly prohibits you from hunting wild camels. This bizarre rule dates back to the 1800s when the United States Army actually imported camels to help soldiers cross the hot, dry terrain. The experiment failed because the camels were grumpy and hated the rocky ground, so they were set loose into the wild. Local cowboys probably got confused seeing these humped beasts wandering around the cactus and tried to bag one for dinner. The government had to step in and protect the leftovers of their failed military experiment. So if you see a camel near the Grand Canyon, you better just tip your hat and keep walking. 5. If you think you are a cowboy of the high seas, think again, because Tennessee has banned catching fish with a lasso. It seems a confused rancher once stood on the riverbank swinging a rope, trying to snag a catfish like it was a runaway steer. The state realized that roping a slippery trout is not only ridiculous, but also unfairly awesome if you actually manage to pull it off. They had to crush the dreams of every rodeo star who wanted to bring their skills to the lake. Now you have to use a hook and line like a boring person instead of yelling yeehaw while dragging a base onto the shore. Leave the lasso in the barn. 6. Photography enthusiasts in Wyoming beware, because taking a picture of a rabbit requires an official permit from January to April. You might think you are just capturing nature, but the government thinks you are harassing the bunnies during their most vulnerable months. Imagine a tourist pulling out a camera to snap a cute photo of a jackrabbit only to be tackled by a game warden for violating privacy laws. The logic is that rabbits are stressed out during winter, and a camera lens is apparently the last straw for their mental health. You literally have to go to a government office and fill out paperwork just to Instagram a bunny. It is bureaucracy at its absolute finest and completely insane. 7 California drivers are known for road rage, but the law says you cannot shoot game from a moving vehicle unless your target happens to be a whale. This incredibly specific loophole suggests that if you spot a humpback while cruising down the highway, you are legally clear to open fire. The writers of this law clearly did not understand geography, since whales generally do not hang out on the interstate. It paints a hilarious picture of a hunter leaning out of a convertible on the freeway scanning the horizon for Moby Dick. The exemption exists, but finding a marine mammal on the pavement is going to be the real challenge here. Just keep your eyes on the road instead. 8. Fishermen in Indiana who prefer gunpowder over worms need to calm down, because shooting a fish with a gun is illegal. Someone apparently got tired of waiting for a bite and decided to just unload a revolver into the creek to speed things up. The state decided that turning a fishing trip into a shootout was unsafe for everyone standing on the muddy banks. It ruins the meat and scares away every other creature for miles, but some adrenaline junkie definitely tried it. You have to leave your pistol at home and rely on patience, which is clearly harder than just blasting the water. This is fishing, not an action movie, so put the weapon away. 9. The toughest fishermen in New Jersey have a secret enemy, and it is the knitting needle, because men are legally banned from knitting during fishing season. This sexist and weirdly specific law implies that too many guys were distracted by making scarves instead of watching their bobbers. Imagine a burly captain sitting on his boat, purling a nice winter sweater while the fish are biting right next to him. The lawmakers decided that men needed to focus on the manly art of catching dinner rather than crafting wool garments. It is a relic of a time when gender roles were rigid, and apparently fishing focus was a matter of state security. Keep your yarn at home, boys. 10. If you plan to visit Illinois, do not bring your giraffe to the lake, because fishing while sitting on a giraffe's neck is strictly forbidden. This law raises so many questions about who exactly owned a giraffe in Illinois and why they used it as a high chair for fishing. Perhaps a local eccentric wanted the ultimate high ground to spot the best fish in the water and thought a safari animal was the solution. The legislature had to sit down and actually vote to ban this practice, which means it must have happened at least once. It is a tragedy for anyone hoping to combine zoo visits with angling, but you have to follow the rules. 11. In Kansas, if you feel the urge to shove your bare hand into a muddy hole to let a monster catfish bite you, well, you're out of luck. The state has officially banned the sport known as noodling, because using your fingers as bait is considered too barbaric. Imagine a guy named Bubba, who refused to buy a fishing pole and decided his own arm was a cheaper alternative until the game warden showed up. The lawmakers likely watched someone get their hand shredded by an angry fish and decided to save people from their own stupidity. You have to act like a civilized human being and use a hook. It is safer for your fingers and probably less traumatic for the catfish. 12. Montana holds on to a truly archaic rule that forbids married women from going fishing alone on Sundays, while unmarried women are totally free to go. It paints a picture of a frustrated wife named Martha, trying to escape her husband for a quiet afternoon by the creek, only to be stopped by the sheriff. The law assumes that if a woman has a ring on her finger, she apparently needs supervision to handle a trout on the Lord's Day. It makes no sense in the modern world, but remains a dusty relic on the books. If you are single in Big Sky Country, enjoy your freedom. But if you are hitched, you better bring a chaperone to hold your bait bucket. 13. If you are hunting in the deep woods of Washington State, you better check your target, because killing Bigfoot is a serious felony punishable by prison time. Skamania County actually passed a law declaring Sasquatch a protected species to prevent trigger-happy hunters from shooting a guy in a ghillie suit. Imagine a hunter spotting a hairy figure in the mist and thinking he bagged a trophy, only to end up sharing a cell with real criminals. The local government takes the legend so seriously that they wrote legal protection for a creature that might not even exist. You can hunt deer or elk, but if you see a tall ape man, just wave hello and walk away slowly. 14. Laziness has no place in South Carolina fishing, because the state bans the use of a device literally called the yo-yo. This mechanical contraption is a spring-loaded reel that automatically hooks the fish and pulls it up while you sit back and drink a cold soda. It seems the authorities believe that fishing should involve actual effort rather than setting a trap and taking a nap on the dock. Picture a fisherman setting up 50 of these gadgets and waiting for them to ding like kitchen timers while he reads a magazine. The state wants you to feel the tug on the line yourself, so you have to leave the automatic robots at home and do the work manually. 15. Vermont takes the peace and quiet of its fish very seriously because it is illegal to whistle underwater while you are fishing. You have to wonder what kind of lung capacity someone had to stay submerged long enough to whistle a tune that annoyed the local trout. Perhaps a diver named Steve was trying to lure bass with a catchy melody and ended up disturbing the entire ecosystem instead. The lawmakers decided that fish deserve a noise-free environment without hearing human musical performances bubbling through the water. It is a completely bizarre restriction, but just to be safe, keep your lips sealed and your head above the surface. Do not try to serenade the salmon in the Green Mountain State. 16. If you visit Lake Superior State University in Michigan, you can actually obtain an official government-issued unicorn questing license. The regulations are surprisingly strict, and they explicitly state that you cannot use a virgin as bait to catch the magical beast. It sounds like a medieval fantasy joke, but the university actually hands these permits out to hopeful hunters looking for horned horses. Imagine a student wandering into the woods with a net and a non-virgin friend, hoping to snag a mythical creature for extra credit. It is a hilarious blend of folklore and bureaucracy that exists right here in the real world. You are welcome to search for magic, but please leave the damsels out of it. 17. The fish in Oregon apparently have very specific dietary restrictions because using canned corn as bait is strictly against the rules. It seems that tossing kernels of sweet corn into the water is like feeding junk food to toddlers, and it messes up the fish digestion. A confused angler probably dumped a whole tin of Green Giant into the river, thinking he was helping, but only caused a massive aquatic stomachache. The game wardens want the fish to eat natural bugs, not processed vegetables from the grocery store aisle. If you get caught with a can of corn in your tackle box, you are going to be in trouble. Stick to worms and leave the side dishes for your dinner. 18. New Hampshire wants you to respect the dead, which is why it is illegal to hunt or have a picnic inside a cemetery. It paints a morbid picture of a family spreading out a sandwich blanket on a tombstone, or a hunter chasing a deer between the graves. Someone clearly lacked boundaries and treated the local boneyard like a public park, forcing the state to intervene with a law. The ghosts just want to rest in peace, without dodging bullets or listening to you chew on potato chips. It is common sense to most people, but apparently New Hampshire had enough issues that they had to make it official. Take your lunch and rifle somewhere else and let the spirits sleep. 19. There is a law in Alaska that forbids you from waking a sleeping bear for the purpose of taking a selfie. This rule is less about animal cruelty and more about preventing tourists from being mauled to death by a grumpy grizzly. Imagine a guy named Kevin sneaking up on a 1,000-pound predator with his smartphone just to get a cute picture for social media. The bear wakes up hangry, and Kevin suddenly realizes he made a terrible mistake. The government had to legally tell people that poking a sleeping killing machine is a bad idea. If you see a bear napping, just walk away quietly, because no photo is worth becoming a snack. Let the giant beast enjoy its nap. 20. Minnesota fishermen are banned from using live goldfish as bait to catch other fish. The state is worried that these bright orange pets will escape the hook and take over the ecosystem like invasive aquatic tyrants. Imagine a guy dumping his fishbowl into the lake hoping to catch a pike, but accidentally starting a goldfish colony that destroys the native habitat. Goldfish are surprisingly resilient and can grow to massive sizes if left unchecked in the wild. The law exists to keep the lakes natural and prevent them from looking like a giant pet store tank. You have to leave your kids' pet bubbles at home and use a minnow like a professional. Do not unleash the goldfish menace on the waters. 21. Florida is known for dangerous wildlife, but the law explicitly bans fishing in golf course ponds to protect you from flying balls. You might think the biggest threat is an alligator, but apparently it is getting hit in the head by a titanium driver while you cast for base. Imagine a fisherman dodging stray shots on the fairway while screaming at a golfer who just wants to finish the back nine. These ponds are legally designated as hazards for the game, not swimming pools for your bait. The state decided that mixing hooks and slice shots was a recipe for disaster. If you want to catch a fish, go to the ocean and leave the water traps for the guys in plaid pants. 22. California takes its amphibian athletes very seriously because if a frog dies during a jumping contest, it cannot be eaten. This rule likely stems from the famous contest inspired by Mark Twain, where frogs are treated like Olympic stars. Imagine a hungry spectator eyeing a losing frog and heating up a frying pan only to be stopped by a referee in a striped shirt. The state determined that these jumping competitors deserve a dignified burial rather than becoming a garlic butter appetizer. It preserves the integrity of the sport and ensures that no one is rooting for a frog to die just because they are hungry for legs. Respect the athlete even if it is green and slimy. 23. West Virginia has drawn a hard line against the robot uprising by banning the use of flying drones to scout for deer. Tech-savvy hunters thought they could sit in a truck and fly a camera over the forest to find the perfect buck without getting their boots muddy. The state decided that using aerial surveillance to track an animal is cheating and destroys the spirit of fair chase. Imagine a deer looking up at a buzzing quadcopter and realizing it is being watched by a lazy guy with an iPad. You have to actually walk into the woods and use your eyes instead of relying on spy technology. Leave the drone at home and hunt like a human. 24. Wisconsin had to pass a law stating it is illegal to shoot a firearm across a highway, which seems like incredibly basic common sense. The fact that this exists implies that someone actually stood on the shoulder and fired a bullet over traffic to hit a deer on the other side. Imagine driving to work and seeing a hunter taking aim at a buck while minivans zoom past in the line of fire. It is terrifying to think that the government had to explicitly tell people not to turn the interstate into a shooting range. Bullets and speeding cars are a terrible combination, so please keep your shots in the woods and away from the morning commute. 25 Arkansas residents who love reptiles need to find a new hobby because keeping an alligator in your bathtub is strictly banned. You might have a permit to own the beast, but the law draws the line at letting it soak in your porcelain tub. Imagine a guy named Cletus trying to take a shower only to find a 6-foot gator relaxing in the bubbles. The plumbing system was simply not designed to handle a swamp monster, and the neighbors probably complained about the snapping noises. It forces owners to build a proper enclosure instead of turning the bathroom into a dangerous swamp. You have to wash yourself without an apex predator staring at you from the drain. 26. The federal government had to step in and ban remote control hunting, where you aim a real gun via a webcam. A company actually set up a system where lazy people could log onto a website and shoot a live animal from their living room chair. Imagine sitting in your underwear eating pizza and clicking a mouse to kill a deer 3 states away like it is a video game. It was a dystopian nightmare that removed all skill and respect from the sport of hunting. The lawmakers shut it down immediately because killing something with an internet connection is just plain wrong. You have to actually leave your house if you want to bring home dinner. 27. In Texas, you do not need a sign to keep people out because purple paint on a fence post legally means no trespassing. The state realized that signs fall down or get shot up, so they decided a specific shade of purple is a universal warning to stay away. Imagine a hiker wandering up to a purple fence and realizing he is about to enter a danger zone without reading a single word. It is a brilliant way for landowners to mark their territory without constantly replacing metal signs that rust or fade. If you see that violet stripe on a tree or post, turn around immediately. The color purple means you are not welcome here. 28. West Virginia hunters are banned from using a ferret to chase rabbits out of their holes in a practice known as the weasel war. Apparently, people used to carry these long, furry creatures in their pockets and send them underground to flush out the bunnies. Imagine a ferret wearing a tiny hunting vest sprinting into a burrow while the hunter waits outside with a net. The state decided that enlisting a weasel as a tactical partner was an unfair advantage over the poor rabbits. It forces you to rely on your own skills or a dog rather than a slinky rodent assassin. You have to leave your pet ferret at home and hunt rabbits the hard way. 29. Connecticut wants to make sure the deer have a fair chance, so you cannot hunt with a silencer on your rifle. The logic is that the loud bang of a gunshot warns other animals in the area that danger is near. Imagine a stealthy hunter trying to take out an entire herd like a secret agent without making a sound. The state believes that nature should be loud and that silent killing is unsportsmanlike for the general public. If you pull the trigger, everyone in the woods deserves to know about it instantly. You have to accept the noise and the ringing in your ears as part of the experience. Put the movie accessories away. 30. West Virginia has a unique law that allows you to take home and eat roadkill, provided you report it within 12 hours. This is legally known as the Grill the Bumper Law, and it lets you salvage a deer that lost a fight with your truck. Imagine a driver hitting a buck, and instead of crying over the dented hood, he gets excited about free venison steaks. The state decided that wasting good meat was a shame, so they created a system to legalize scavenging from the asphalt. You just have to call the authorities to prove you did not poach it. If you have a strong stomach and a hungry family dinner is served right on the highway. 31. In Louisiana, stealing a crawfish is a felony punishable by 10 years of hard labor, which seems insane for a tiny crustacean. You might think you are just snagging a snack from a trap, but the law treats it like a major bank heist. Imagine a thief named Boudreaux creeping through the swamp to pinch a few mudbugs, only to end up breaking rocks in a prison yard. The state takes its gumbo ingredients so seriously that touching another man's catch is a life-ruining decision. It protects the livelihood of Cajun fishermen who work hard for those delicious little shellfish. If you want to boil, buy your own sack, or risk spending a decade in stripes. 32. Across the United States, the practice of spotlighting is considered the cardinal sin of poaching and is universally banned. This involves freezing a deer in its tracks using your car high beams at night, so you can shoot it while it stands there confused. Imagine a lazy hunter driving a sedan through the woods, blasting light at a buck that thinks it is just seeing a really bright moon. The deer stares into the glare, completely paralyzed by biology, making it the easiest and most unfair target imaginable. Game wardens absolutely hate this trick because it removes all the skill and fairness from the hunt. You have to hunt in the daylight and actually give the animal a sporting chance to escape. 33. In Pennsylvania, it is actually a crime to harass a hunter while they are trying to bag a deer. This law exists because activists used to follow hunters into the woods and bang pots and pans to scare all the animals away. Imagine a guy sitting quietly in a tree, stand waiting for hours only for a protester to show up blowing a trumpet. The state decided that intentionally ruining a legal hunt is a form of harassment that needs to be punished. It creates a tense situation where one person has a rifle and the other has a noisemaker. If you disagree with hunting, you have to protest somewhere else, because the woods are legally reserved for the quiet pursuit of game. 34. North Dakota has a bizarre bureaucratic rule that says you cannot exterminate a pigeon without a specific permit. You might see them as rats with wings, but the government sees them as paperwork that needs to be filed in triplicate. Imagine a farmer watching a pigeon poop on his tractor and having to call a government office before he can do anything about it. The law treats these common city birds like they are protected eagles, requiring a stamp of approval to remove them. It forces you to pause your pest control efforts and wait for a clerk to sign a form. Just remember that even the most annoying bird in the barn is technically protected by red tape until you get permission. 35. Hunters in New York are strictly forbidden from baiting deer by putting out a giant block of salt. The deer love the taste so much that it is considered unfair entrapment to lure them in with a salty snack. Imagine a buck wandering through the forest and finding a delicious mineral treat only to realize it is a trap set by a lazy hunter. The state wants you to track the animal through the woods, not wait for it to come to a buffet you set up. It levels the playing field and ensures that the deer are not manipulated by their cravings. You have to rely on stealth and patience rather than grocery store tricks to fill your freezer. 36. Raccoons in Virginia enjoy a weirdly specific holy truce because you cannot hunt them on Sundays until 2 in the morning. The law implies that the trash pandas need a few hours of peace to attend their own church services or just rest. Imagine a hunter sitting on his porch, checking his watch, and waiting for the clock to strike 2 so he can legally chase a raccoon. It creates a bizarre window of safety for the masked bandits before the season opens back up in the middle of the night. The legislators likely had a reason involving church attendance, but it resulted in a raccoon curfew. Respect the holy hours and let them dig through the garbage in peace. 37. Alabama has outlawed the cruel practice of hunting turkeys using live decoys to attract other birds. This used to involve tying a live turkey to a string and making it gobble to lure its friends into an ambush. Imagine a turkey realizing it is being used as a traitor to betray its own flock while a hunter hides in the bushes. The state decided that using a living animal as a puppet was crossing the line of sportsmanship and animal welfare. Now you have to use plastic decoys or your own mouth to call them in, which is much fairer. You cannot force a bird to be an accomplice in its own family's demise, so stick to the rubber versions. 38. If you think modern rifles are too easy, Missouri actually allows you to hunt using an atlatl, which is a Stone Age spear thrower. This ancient weapon dates back to 10,000 BC and involves launching a dart with a handheld lever for extra power. Imagine a guy dressed in camo standing next to high-tech bow hunters holding a stick that was invented by cavemen. The state recognizes this primitive skill as a legal method for taking down deer, which is undeniably awesome. It requires incredible strength and accuracy to master a tool that was used to hunt mammoths. If you want to really connect with your ancestors, ditch the scope and try hurling a spear like a prehistoric warrior. 39. New Jersey protects the mute swan from hunters, even though the bird is technically an invasive species. The law seems to be based entirely on the fact that swans are pretty and look nice floating on the ponds in parks. Imagine a biologist explaining that these birds destroy local habitats, but the politicians refusing to allow a hunt because they look like fairy tale creatures. It is a classic case of beauty privilege in the animal kingdom, where ugly pests get exterminated, but beautiful ones get a pass. You can shoot a duck or a goose, but if it is a graceful white swan, you have to hold your fire. They are invasive bullies, but they are legally untouchable because they are cute. 40. California stepped into the eternal war between cats and dogs by banning the use of dogs to pursue bobcats. Hunters used to let packs of hounds chase the wildcats up trees, which made for an easy and somewhat unfair shot. Imagine a bobcat thinking it can outrun anything, only to be cornered by a barking pack of relentless tracking dogs. The state decided that the cats deserve a break from being harassed by their canine enemies. It forces hunters to track the elusive predators themselves, which is significantly harder than following a dog. You have to leave your hounds in the truck and play a game of cat and mouse without the dog. 41. In the town of Olney, Illinois, the squirrels are not just rodents, they are royalty, because the albino squirrels have the absolute legal right of way. Imagine a busy driver slamming on his brakes and causing a 5-car pileup just because a white fluffy squirrel decided to cross the road. The law dictates that if you hit one of these pale nut gatherers, you are going to pay a serious fine. It turns the local traffic into a chaotic game where the squirrels are the winners and the drivers are terrified. You have to yield to the ghost-like creatures, because in this town, the white squirrels legally own the asphalt, and you are just a guest in their world. 42. Virginia hunters have a weird restriction regarding the scent they use to attract deer because you strictly cannot use doe urine containing real bodily fluids. Imagine a hunter carefully reading the ingredients label on a bottle of pee to make sure it is 100% synthetic fake urine. The state wants you to fool the bucks with a chemical concoction made in a lab rather than the real natural stuff due to disease risks. It creates a hilarious market for artificial deer toilet water that smells terrible but is legally safe to spill. If a game warden catches you with a bottle of authentic organic doe pee, you are actually breaking the law, so stick to the fake yellow stuff. 43. Texas holds massive rattlesnake roundups, but even they have limits on how you can catch the slithering, venomous beasts. It is explicitly illegal to spray gasoline into a snake den to flush them out because the fumes are toxic to the land. Imagine a guy named Tex dragging a fuel can to a hole and trying to smoke out a nest of vipers like a pyromaniac. The state decided that poisoning the ground to annoy snakes was a step too far, even for a pest control festival. You have to catch them using hooks or tongs like a brave person instead of polluting the soil. The snakes might bite you, but at least you are not destroying the environment with unleaded fuel while hunting. 44. Colorado has perhaps the most ridiculous method of pest control in the entire world because it is technically legal to suck prairie dogs out of the ground. Exterminators use a giant high-powered vacuum truck to slurp the rodents right out of their tunnels like dust bunnies. Imagine a little prairie dog sitting in his living room when suddenly he gets sucked up a tube at 60 miles per hour into a padded tank. It sounds like a cartoon villain plot, but it is a real service offered to clear fields without using poison. The device is literally called the Suckomatic, and it turns animal removal into a giant cleaning chore. If you have a rodent problem, you can just vacuum the lawn. 45. In Texas, the bats that live inside public bridges are considered official state residents and you cannot hunt or kill them. The Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin is famous for housing millions of Mexican free-tailed bats that fly out at dusk. Imagine a tourist trying to swat one with a tennis racket only to be arrested for assaulting a protected citizen of the bridge. The state recognizes that these flying mammals eat tons of mosquitoes, so they gave them free rent and legal immunity. They might smell bad and poop everywhere, but you have to respect their housing rights. If you mess with the bridge bats, you're messing with Texas, so just watch the show and keep your hands to yourself. 46. Louisiana hunters looking for fur coats need to put away the batteries because it is illegal to hunt fur-bearing animals by shocking the water. This practice involved using an electrical device to zap the swamp and stun animals like minks or otters so they float to the top. Imagine a lazy trapper trying to electrocute an entire bayou just to get a few pelts without setting a single trap. The state realized that turning the water into an electric chair was dangerous for everything swimming in it, including the hunter. It forces you to use traditional traps rather than acting like a supervillain with a lightning gun. You have to catch the mink the old-fashioned way without frying the entire ecosystem. 47. Montana has a law that sounds like the plot of an old Western movie gone terribly wrong. It is specifically illegal to drive a herd of livestock onto a railroad track with the intent to injure the train. This implies that a rancher was so angry at the railroad company that he sacrificed his own woolly flock just to derail a locomotive. Imagine a conductor seeing a wall of sheep on the tracks and realizing it was a sabotage attempt by a vengeful farmer. The law exists to protect the trains from biological roadblocks and to stop people from wasting good livestock. You have to find a better way to protest the railroad than turning your sheep into a fluffy barricade. 48. The porcupine is a prickly creature that enjoys special protection in the woods of Maine unless it decides to eat your house. The law states you strictly cannot hunt a porcupine just for fun, but you can kill it if it is destroying your property. Imagine a hunter spotting a porcupine in a tree and having to wait until it actually takes a bite out of his porch before he can shoot. The state wants to prevent people from shooting them for target practice because they are slow and easy to hit. Unless the spiky rodent is actively chewing on your tires or cabin walls, you have to leave it alone. It is a conditional ceasefire based on the porcupine's behavior. 49. The absolute winner of ridiculous laws is the International Salmon Act, which makes it illegal to handle a salmon in suspicious circumstances. This real statute applies in the United States and makes you wonder what exactly constitutes a suspicious fish. Imagine a police officer stopping a guy in a dark alley who is nervously holding a large salmon under his trench coat. The law was meant to stop illegal poaching rings, but the wording makes it sound like the fish itself is a suspect in a crime. You have to hold your salmon with confidence and transparency to avoid getting arrested. If you look guilty while holding a fish, you are technically breaking the law, so try to look innocent when carrying your dinner. Well, there you have it. If you learned anything today, it's that you should definitely cancel your plans to get a fish drunk or vacuum a prairie dog this weekend. Seriously, keep your moose inside the plane, folks. It's really not that hard. If you enjoyed this dive into legal madness, slap that like button and subscribe to BrainFumble right now so you never miss our next descent into stupidity. Hit that notification bell or the suspicious salmon might come for you. Now I have to know, which law was the absolute dumbest? The drunk fish or the unicorn license? Let me know in the comments.